I'm getting performance anxiety, bro.
Yo, Mike just broke down on the podcast. I just want to dive right in. Licensed psychologist who specializes in sexual health and wellness. What does that mean?
You know, sexual health is something that affects every single one of us. I mean, sex is how we all got here. And for me, I thought if I was going to be dealing with people, how am I not going to be dealing with sex? So I wanted to specialize in it so I could be prepared to deal with all of the variety of issues that come along with our sexuality, because sex is complicated and diverse and a lot of stuff comes up.
For sure.
So I wanted to be prepared to be able to deal with anything that came through the door.
True. It gets tricky sometimes. I often don't know if I'm even doing it right myself, which actually brings me to my next point. You're a sex coach. What does that mean?
Well, I don't actually see people having sex, but I give them all the skills they would need to have better sex. So it may be improving technique. It may be learning how to communicate during sex. It may be just being able to talk about it and exploring your sexuality. Sex coaching is more solution focused. So it's, here's the problem. Here's how we fix it.
Interesting. So, I mean, so basically if you're having problems in your sex life, you're the go-to girl.
I'm the sex doctor. Yes.
Amazing. So how did you get into this? Because
people always ask that question. I was always curious about sex. I grew up in a conservative, Catholic, Latino household.
Were you Mormon?
No, I was Catholic. Sex was not talked about openly, but I was curious about it. It was everywhere. I had young parents, and as a kid in the 80s, sex was everywhere. So for me, it was an interest.
Did you talk to your parents about sex?
Yes, I was the one having I had a lot of questions. Whoa. So I'd go to mom and be like, I heard this thing at school today, or what's this? And I got in a lot of trouble for it.
What was that first conversation like?
Yeah.
Well, I remember I heard Wet Dream
in
like first grade, and I didn't know what that was. So I asked my mother what that was, and she started crying. Almost every sex talk I had with my mom, she was in tears. So I learned right away that sex made people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But for me, it seemed like something so natural. I mean, everyone, that's how we all got here. It's what we all have in common. But people, are so uncomfortable talking about it because there's so much shame around it. There's so much stigma around talking about sex and how you should do sex and what it's like. But I think it's a part of our identity. No matter what type of sex you're having, it's a part of who you are.
True. True. It's a very interesting perspective. Me, I'm very open with my parents. To be honest with you, I'm probably too open with my parents. Don't really give too many shits because, I think part of our relationship is the fact that we can talk to each other about whatever. Spencer, I know, is
not so open. My parents didn't have that openness, I guess. So I am curious as to how education and parenting, affects that conversation that you've seen.
Well, they probably didn't have a great sex talk with their parents. I know for my mom, she said sex was never talked about. Even to this day, I remember my grandmother first came into my office and she said, why would anyone want to be a sex therapist? So even in our culture, it was something that, is that something that people do? But I think the talk varies depending on your culture, depending on your background, depending on the age of your children.
Are you active on social media?
Not so much.
DMs are often a great way for people to connect, right? Same with dating apps. What are your thoughts on dating apps? Because I was just in a relationship. I got out of it. I took my time to be depressed and emotionally unavailable and do nothing for about a month. And a month and a half maybe. And then I hopped on this dating app. And the dynamic of dating apps is so intriguing to me. I've never met up with anyone on a dating app, and quite honestly, I don't think I ever will. It's odd to me. Do you have an opinion about dating apps and people meeting through the internet?
I do, because again, you're looking at photographs of people, you're looking at a profile, and maybe you're making judgments about who that person is. So you may have this fantasy in your mind of who that person is, and then you meet them in person, and they suck. And they suck. They don't they don't meet your expectations, and that's because dating apps, I think, are feeding into this fantasy of ideal partner, and people are putting out their best self, and then you meet them in person, and they're completely different than who they say they are online, or their picture is old, or again, they're putting out there what they want people to see, but then they can't have a great great conversation when they're with someone in person, which is an issue
happens,
too.
Yeah, that happens all the time. I feel like that's like even prevalent on Instagram too. Like you have people that look a certain way on Instagram, and then you meet them in person. You're like, well,
oh yeah, it's a real life catfish. Yeah, no, yeah, it's true. Just like I'm strictly talking about like what you said. It's like you see these people on dating apps, and you're really only judging them based on what they look like
and their bios. Like, of course, I mean,
sure, bro, but everyone's got like a clever bio, like, oh, my friends put me on this app, or like something.
I'm kidding. Anyways, you know I don't read the bios. You've seen me swipe. It's like, and
by the way, Mike swipes right on everyone.
Yeah, I have an issue with this swiping culture too, because again, you're basing it off of the picture and
terminology.
Swiping culture.
You know, the picture probably isn't. You know, who is the person based on the picture? And a lot of people are putting pictures of their bodies and no shirt on, and that's just that's ridiculous. That's not showing people who you really are.
Building off that, what do you think is the best way to handle relationships in a healthy way?
Can you be more specific?
In regards to finding a new relationship.
Oh, I'm all about in person. I think everyone should meet organically in person, because when you meet in person, you're reading facial cues, body language. There's pheromones, which are these chemical messengers that we emit.
Is that the thing that
helps us attract
when you
a mate?
When you smell? You like when your partner has like a smell and you love that smell, right? You like smell her hair, and she's got like.
But it's not an actual scent; it's actually a chemical. But that it evokes certain emotions
that you've linked to that person who you love.
Because not everyone's smell is going to be attractive to everyone. Specific smells can be more attractive to certain people depending on your pheromone match.
Yeah.
So there's a whole science behind it. That's sort of the biology of how we attract
I had a girl
people.
tell me one day we were like talking, and she goes, "Let's see if we like each other's scents." And she came up and smelled my hair. And at first I was like, this is kind of weird. But then I was like, but she's kind of right. Because, it's important. You like hug your girl and you smell her, like her neck and her hair. And it's just like, oh.
Yeah, totally.
It's my girl.
Low key, if a girl said that to me, I wouldn't talk to her ever again.
Or when people are fighting in relationships or on the verge of divorce, their smell becomes offensive.
Ooh,
so I noticed that a lot. Ooh, I hated the smell of his breath. Everything was terrible.
Wow.
It was just, you start to, it has a lot to do with when they're about to disconnect.
You don't want to be with someone who's stanky.
No, absolutely.
Nah, you hate to see that.
Yeah,
hygiene is very important, especially as we're talking about sex.
That's like a huge, that could be like a deciding factor, like from like moving on from like a one date to like a relationship. Like if a girl I'm talking to or like hooking up with has bad breath or like,
oh, bro,
it's like,
I'm out.
I don't even really want to tell you. Yeah. Like, I just want to just leave. Like, get some gum, a toothbrush.
You should probably tell her. Someone needs to tell her.
Yeah. Someone's got to tell.
But like, I'm going to tell her right before I tell her like to leave. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to tell her and be like, yo, if you freshen it up, maybe this can continue. Like, I'm going to be like, yo, here's.
Slip her a note and put it in her purse.
Like, no, I'm going to put it in the Uber. Like, I'm going to give the Uber guy the message to deliver on the way home. Yo, can you get a toothbrush, please?
Do you believe in soulmates? Is that a thing?
It can be. I believe people can connect and they can feel, they can feel like best friends. They can feel like partners for life. They can feel like they've known each other in another time and place. I mean, I really believe that can happen. You
just described pretty much me to the T. That happened in my last relationship. And it's tough. It's tough because I'm sorry. There's nothing over there. I'm just looking. It's
something flying around behind me.
But okay, breakup sex is also a thing. You have a post here. You said a wise man once said nothing. He let her vent and then they had sex. Is that like? That's breakup sex.
Well,
that's makeup sex.
Makeup sex. Yeah, I'm sure people have breakup sex too, but makeup sex is, having a fight or a disagreement is an arousal state. So arousal is what triggers into sexual desire or sexual, any arousal can be either sexual or emotional arousal that can lead to sex.
It's like, what about, fighting with someone makes you horny? Is that like kind of fucked up?
Yeah, that's right.
That's an arousal state. Exactly.
When I was fighting KSI, in no way was I horny. I just wanted to beat the shit out of him.
But I'm sure you wanted to do something after the fight.
No, man, I went straight to sleep.
That's what I mean.
I was concussed.
Yeah.
Sometimes those fights create so much passion. Those fights can create so much passion that it makes you want to have sex with your partner,
about
even
this?
though you can't stand them or you hate them in the moment.
All of us an interesting look. After the fight.
I agree with that.
Even
during the fight, I think he was not paying attention to the fight. He kept looking over and he was like,
not true. Hey, not true. All right, this is crazy interesting. Thank you for talking with us today.
Time.
Definitely a very fiery podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to subscribe. You can like subscribe to the podcast, the Impaulsive Podcast, which by the way, again, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're going to educate you entertainingly.
Education.
Edutainment. Dr. Shannon Chavez. Seriously, thank you.
Wow. Chavez.
That's what I said. Thank you for putting up with us today.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Of course. Guys, we will see you on Wednesday. I love y'all. Thank you for watching. Take it easy. Peace.